me.
There's this thing that I understand now that I didn't understand before, which is that those are things I learned. They aren't a byproduct of time. Like those are things that I learned. Really, I learned a lot of that from you. And I've learned a lot of it from other like people I've had in my life that have been therapists, coaches, friends, like comrades. Like there's something that feels like motivating isn't the right word because it's not the right level of word, but that it feels like had I learned how to do that earlier, not that it's like you would take back parts of your life because like everything teaches you something, I suppose. And I would rather have learned how to honor my mom and myself as someone who survived her death earlier. It's not like I wanted to stay sorrowful. Like, remember last year, it was the 20-year anniversary, and I had this huge epiphany, and I thought, okay, I got it. Like, this is it. I beat it. I did it, right? So, what I realized is last year that, like, I don't have to be sad to prove that it happened. I don't have to stay sad to prove that it was fucking awful, that it almost killed me, that I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I don't have to prove that to anyone. Like, I don't have to prove that to myself either. But I don't have to stay in that place of like, this is awful for other people to like give me the validation that I didn't get, that it was awful and like a life upheaval. And so it was this process, and I mean, it's continuing of like unhooking from the yoke of like sadness, A, because I don't want to feel that way anymore, but B, I realized like I don't have to care what anyone else thinks about my grief. Like, I don't have to give a shit about what anyone else thinks about how long it's taken, what it's done to me, how I've handled it. Was it too much? Not enough? Am I too happy, too sad? Like, I don't have to care about any of it. Some of that I think is a byproduct of age.
I was going to say there's such a developmental component here where, you were 18 years old.
Yeah.
And think about all of us where we're at 18. Yeah. You're taking more risks. There's a little more angst in the air.
Yeah.
There's a little more angst in the air because our brain is doing things to make us more independent people.
Yeah.
Our frontal lobes aren't fully formed yet, right? We can't think with bigger perspective. We just can't, it's just not, we're not fully there yet.
Yeah.
And when trauma happens in those younger years, there's a little bit of a stuckness that happens around where we are developmentally when that trauma occurred.
Right.
And at year 20, which is also interesting, in the 20-year anniversary, as we're stepping in more adult years, even in thinking of, anniversaries go by, 20 years of dealing with this, you're in your adult stage of grieving, where you got to let go of that. And part of adolescence also is having a really deep connection with tribe outside of family unit, nuclear family. Yeah. And so we do care what other people think. It's actually really imperative to our development that we're able to connect outside of the home and feel like we have community like that. And when we're adults, that need shifts because we know ourselves and we know our community and we trust it. And so we're able to let go of some of those more adolescent patterns.
Yeah.
And shift into a different stage of development.
Yeah. And I guess also realizing like it's the both, right? Like I survived because of my friends. Like I survived only really because of my friends. And my broader friend group was also the thing that I like performed for so that they didn't leave, right? It's like the thing that I realized makes me so sad about like being young and losing someone, particularly at that point, because both my biological parents had died, and it was families are complicated. Like what we have to do, how we have to perform so that we don't think more people will leave. Like there's this like, don't leave. I don't want to be left. Like the abandonment stuff is so deep for anyone at that age, but just like parental loss, I think actually I'm sure all of it is similar that way of like, I'll do anything for you not to leave me. And it backfires, right? Because you can't do anything. You can only do the things you can do in that moment. And so to not understand a different paradigm or a different framework for like, I'm enough on my own, or like the grief is normal. You shouldn't be leaving me while I'm grieving. What's happening to me is normal, you asshole.
Connection. Yeah.
So it's why I think that, even when I'll like post on Facebook or Instagram, like something about my mom, and I get like really loving and like well-wished, are you okay? Or here's a therapist number. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm okay. I'm really doing this for me at 17, for me at 23, for me at 27. Because if I had seen that, like if I had seen someone say the things that like I can say now, it would have felt different for me. I could have said, but look, like this is normal. I'm normal. And I don't know that that's ever been the case. I don't know that anyone's ever really been able to point to like normal grief, which is any kind, right?
And I think that there's something in particular that happens when you're in that smaller bracket of people
Yeah.
who lose parents when you're still a child,
Yeah.
That's not normal. That's a tragedy. It's normal to grieve, but then there's also these other special circumstances that occur
Right.
that require more community efforts and uplifting because of the age that you're at.